Yep, just started the recording. So before I get into it, does anybody have any thoughts about the chapter as a whole? Anything you noticed? Want to talk about?
This is just chapter 1, right?
Yeah, chapter 1. So
Setup.
yeah, you install Rust. Do you set up a project the hard way and then use cargo?
No questions here.
Cool.
I can start. Start it off. But answer your question. Yes, I just followed along with the documentation. Overall, for me, like the start of this, like it says the Rust book, and so it really does feel like a book. A lot of documentation I've seen for other languages can be kind of messy, but also not nearly as I would say how to describe it, attention grabbing. You know, it just flows well from one segment to the other, and I feel like it's more of guiding instead of just like trying to uh piece together individual chunks.
Yeah, it's pretty. I like it a bit. And then we'll get into some more documentation you can see in your editor as well. Like it's super good documentation. Language allows for a lot of very nice things like that. And you can generate a similar book to this with doc comments in your own code if you want. Did everybody anyone have any trouble installing or getting through this chapter? Or anybody that wanted to at least? Cool. Okay. So let's get into it then. So for the first thing we get into here is Rust up. So that's the preferred way to install Rust and the associated toolchain. So it's very nice for me. At least I really enjoy having Rust up there because if you think of languages like JavaScript, Python, Java, any of those languages, most languages don't have their own version manager. So there's no real need to have a different one like NVM, Conda, JEnv. All of those are already handled by just having Rust up. And then as well, I think it mentions it in here. I'm not sure where it says, but if it doesn't, Rust up is also good for you can manage your build targets with it. So, for example, if I run Rust up target list, can everyone see that, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can look at all the different build targets for it, or all of the ones I have. And I have a few installed like Wasm and Windows. So if I want to make sure this runs on Windows and Linux and also Mac OS, I can do that.
What was that command you ran?
It's Rust up target list.
Target list.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's another, I mentioned it, but Wasm is another important one. I have a few other ones installed for different projects, but they're unrelated or not super common, I would say. So it's pretty nice as well. You can do lots of things. You can update your toolchain, set your default versions. You can add a target, rest up target add. You can do all of that globally through the CLI, but also, if you prefer, you can always you can set it through a configuration file, which is preferred if you're doing it per project. Yeah. And then some extra credit if you want to learn a bit more. There is the Rust Up book, so you can look a bit more into it, see how does each tool chain differ, what is a tool chain, any of that, what are components. So if you want to go a little bit deeper, you can figure that out too. I'm going to skip through the whole installation and updating section. Anyone have any thoughts about that? Any questions or comments?
So that Rust Up update is only updating like the Rust Up tool itself, right? Does it it doesn't update like all your tool chains, or I haven't looked at it
It does.
in depth. So it whatever, like every tool chain you have installed, it'll.
So if I do Rust Up update, it updates all of the channels I have.
Okay.
So all of mine
those are just like
updated.
different versions of Rust, like for different build targets, I guess is what you said.
Yeah, so I have Windows installed
M1
locally.
Max and Windows x86, 64.
Okay, yeah. Cool. Toolchain. Yeah, if we want to get into it a little bit more, a channel is just there's stable, beta, and nightly. A lot of more experimental projects use nightly to use those features, but as the name implies, it's not stable. So if you do something like you need at least version 1.65 of Rust to use this project, then you can be fairly confident that they won't make any breaking changes and it should work as long as you stay within the same edition. But for nightly, a lot of the time, some components won't be in there. So it could pretty easily break if you don't pin that version. So for example, since I'm going into more jargony things and we're already here, a component is just something like Rust has Rust-C, the compiler, but a lot of things like Rust-FMT, the formatter, and Clippy, if they're broken in the nightly version, they will not be included. So you will not have access to those. So you'll need to find a version that has that specific piece in it. And then a tool chain is just all of those things together. So you have your channel. So I have, for example, here I have stable and then this triple. So that's the latest stable version right here. But then I also have this very specific 1.71. And yeah. That's just all of the related tools and Rust-C. But you can find in profiles, each one will have different things. So the default profile will have cargo, Rust standard, Rust-C, all of that. I don't remember what your original question is. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Any other questions come from that? Are you good?
I'm good.
Cool. Yeah. Anyone else have any questions before we move on to the next chapter? Cool. Okay. So the next thing here, in this hello world, we're just going through the hard way of making a program. So here they make a project and add a main function, which is important to know. The entry point for Rust is the main function. If you don't have it, you cannot run your executable. It will throw a compiler error saying you need a main function. And then from there, you can use rustc to compile that code and run the executable as normal. Yeah, okay. And then here we're getting into the println macro. So at this point, we don't need to worry about a macro is. It's just essentially, if you're familiar with JavaScript, it's your console log. It's how we print to the console. And an important thing to know about Rust is every statement must have a semicolon. Any questions so far? Cool. So what some people are mentioning last time around, compiling and running are separate steps for Rust. So we need to first run rustc to get an executable and then run it. We can't do something like in JavaScript where we can just write some code and run the file. So after we compile, we get an executable and we can run it. Yep, and then here it mentions that this is all well and good for smaller programs, but we can get into once we get into more complicated programs, it's not as manageable to compile and run yourself every time. Any questions or thoughts on this section? Cool. So then here we get into some good stuff. Did they mention? I think they mentioned that in here. Oh, they do. Okay, yeah, here's a little note. So one of the pieces we had mentioned before is we have Rust FMT. So there's also a formatter built into Rust, the toolchain. So you can format your code. It's pretty opinionated, so it's very nice to not have to set up anything. No prettier setup or anything. It's just right there. And you don't have to install it if you have Rust installed. So all set. And then here we're going to get into some benefits to using Cargo instead of Rust, or Rust up and rustc alone. So yeah, let's get into it. creating a project with cargo is a lot easier. You can just open up the run cargo new and you have an executable. Everything's all set up. So if I do what they say there, I'll call mine cargo test. We created our binary. And if you look here, I guess you can't look there for all that, but if I cd into it, we have a Git repo already initted. So you could decide not to do that, but if you don't have a Git repo already initialized in the directory, it'll initialize one for you and it'll create a git ignore with the target folder. So some of the benefits of using cargo, with that other way of running it, we had to run rustc on whatever our file was called. We had to know the name of the file. And then afterwards, we needed to know the name of the executable. So, and then it gets even more complex if we're adding in some flags. So just to illustrate the point, if we're using rustc to compile this code, I would have to do this, and it does work. It gives me an executable in this file, in this folder. But that's a whole lot to type in, and I have to figure it out for every project if it's different. And then here's a good time we can accidentally remove the main function. And there's rustfmt formatting. It's already going to tell me since I have an extension installed. But running this, we're going to get some errors. So another great thing about Rust, it's letting me know right here, there's no main function. And I should definitely have a main function. So, but what if I say, I don't want any colors in here? And then what if I say, I want this to be formatted as JSON? And then the more and more you add to this, it's more and more to type every single time, more to remember every time. So if we use cargo, it's going to abstract a lot of this away for us. So if we want to build with cargo, we just do cargo build. And I didn't need to know any of that. I could pass my flags in cargo toml. So building it, I just do cargo build and it works. And then the same exact thing happens. It still looks pretty difficult. So going to target debug, and then we have cargo test.exe in here. So that's kind of annoying. If I want to run it, it'll work. So if I decide to run ./target/debug/ what's it called? Cargo test. Cargo test. It works, but that's still a lot to remember. So luckily, we have another command we can run. We can do cargo run. But another thing we can do, so let's say we want to print by world, something like that. We can just run cargo run, and it builds it for us. You can see this new compile step here that wasn't there last time. It compiles and runs. And we can do the same thing here and keep going. Any questions so far? Cool. So taking us back to our Rust FMT, if I go and run, I set my editor up specifically to run Rust FMT on save, which you can do as well. You could also run it through your terminal, whatever you want to do. But if we add a rustfmt.toml, then in here we can add some different rules. So let's say I want to use tabs. I can say tabs are true. And then I can go back in here, reformat, and now we're using tabs. Not very easy to tell, but yeah. And like I mentioned before, there's really good documentation for everything. I get documentation in this file without having to do anything. And then I can click on this documentation, which will take me to the actual page. And you can go there as well, go to the documentation and figure out what are all the things we can change. I'm not going to go there for now, but just know there's a website where you can see all of those rules that you can change. Another pretty nice thing. So right now we're building our code and running it every time. Or when we do build, we actually output to target. But that takes time. We have a really small program, so the executable doesn't take long to build. But if we just want to make sure our code compiles, we can run cargo check. And it works. And it's going to cache that result. So the second time we run it, it's going to take 0.00 seconds. And we can introduce a bug in here somewhere. So let's remove all our semicolons. And here it says, hey, add a semicolon here, please. And if we do that, it's happy again. And I have my code essentially doing that already. So I'm using Rust Analyzer, and I definitely recommend it if you haven't installed it, because you can essentially run a check every time you, or just it runs as you type. So it's pretty nice. Any questions here? Cool. I'm going to touch a little bit. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say these are all commands based off of cargo and like even the formatting configuration, right? That's all like just piped through cargo and like just functionality from cargo and not what's the tool chain? Rust up, right? So it's like Rust up installs your versions, and then cargo is a tool that uses like whichever version you select. And cargo has all the configurations for like the cargo check and like all the other ones you were going over. Is that right?
Yeah, cargo's still using Rust up or Rusty and everything. And
right under the hood. But
yeah,
like all these features are like part of cargo. I just want to make sure I understand the like environment, like where all the tools like exist.
Oh yeah, like the formatting is purely through my editor at this point. I could run formatting within my
right And which you said it was Rust? Was there just like a regular Rust and a Rust like base in add-on and then or extension as well as like the Rust analyzer? Like, are they separate?
Oh yeah, there's Rust Analyzer, but as well I have Better Toml to get all of this autocomplete within these files. So like if I go in my Cargo Toml, I can set Rust version, or I can accidentally set my version to an incorrect or an invalid schema, and then that'll get caught. So that is from Better Toml, I believe. Yeah, even Better Toml. If you do not have it already, I would definitely recommend it.
I think a good comparison would be like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jasper. I think a good comparison would be like Cargo is to Rust as NPM is to JavaScript, and a lot of this is just abstracted away by like Cargo handling Rust up and Rusty and Rust Analyzer.
Yeah, exactly. Cargo is a package manager, and this is a package as mentioned by this key here. So yeah, and NPM is indeed Node Package Manager. So it's pretty similar, except for Rust has a lot of things that Node does not have built in. Just right there. Another example is testing. That's built right into Rust.
Sorry, I finally pulled up my VS Code. I don't know if you showed your Rust extensions. Did you say you had both like the base Rust and Rust Analyzer? I don't know like what the difference is between.
I'm not sure what you mean by base Rust. What's the extension?
Well, if I look for the like just Rust, like just RUST extension, there's
this.
It says it includes Rust Analyzer, and I guess some other things like for crates.
Oh, is
like
it this one?
Crates packages. No, it's the very top one.
Extensions for Rust.
That first one, yeah.
So it is.
So it looks like it includes Rust Analyzer as well as like something for crates. I don't know what that is integrating though.
Libraries for Rust.
Yeah,
so like crates,
but like I guess Cargo. I don't know if it adds like a tab or something, so you can like browse them in the.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
I was just trying to see like if there is a reason I needed to get both, and I guess that would be the main thing. Because it just says it uses Rust Analyzer, crates, and then auto docstring.
I'm gonna get that. I did not know this existed. The base Rust Analyzer is very good. So what else was in here? So Rust syntax. I don't see auto docstring in here.
And oh wait, that's a different one. Are you looking at Rust syntax?
Yeah, I see Rust right here.
That's different than the one that mine's pulled up.
Oh.
Wait, if you go back up, what? That's very strange.
Auto docstring.
It's the same title, not Rust extensions pack. The very top item, is that one the one that had
over here?
Yeah, the very first one.
Oh, this one is the one that has Rust syntax, crates, and Rust Analyzer.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize there was a tiny little scroll bar there, so I didn't see the Rust syntax.
I don't know why it's like that, but yes.
That's a terrible
experience. Oh.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know what the Rust syntax could be useful, I guess, as well.
Yeah, let's see what that does. I guess I have no dependencies to look at that, so it's not going to help me right now, but I will. It seems useful though, so I don't have to go to crates.io to see what the versions all are. But yeah, for now, yeah, you wanted to know if Rust format was a part of Cargo, or if we could format with Cargo.
Yeah, I was just making sure I knew all the tools that are like part of Cargo.
Oh, the Cargo
So-
commands. Luckily for you, there's a Cargo book.
There's a Cargo book. Of course there is. Hold on.
Yeah, I was gonna get into it. We can do it right now.
Cargo.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna go super deep into it unless somebody's interested, but somebody is. Okay, I did not add the Cargo book to my notes. So, yeah, here's everything you need. Cargo bench, cargo build, check, clean, doc, fetch, fix, run, Rust-C, rust doc test. Cargo test runs your tests, obviously. Fix is kind of like, it'll fix any of your Rust-C lint warnings, which isn't the same as your Clippy warnings. But you can fix some of them, and it'll automatically fix them.
You mentioned Clippy before. Is that like just part of the formatter, or is that some other package?
It's a linter. You can set it up
Oh, okay.
in your VS Code settings to run on save Clippy instead, and you'll get better information. So something, let's do for IN 1 to 10. If I say something like this, I think it'll, does it care? I guess not.
Okay.
Oh, okay, never mind. If I do something like this, and then I'll change this to empty. Oh well, it's not doing anything right now. But I've had it tell me that I should not use this as an index. But yeah, you'll get some.
Okay, so it's just for linting, and then format actually does like default like stylistic changes, I guess. So like white space and like extra lines and stuff. Is that the formatting? Is that all the format does?
Yeah, it does
Okay.
stylistic things that should not affect your code or what your code does when you run it. And most likely your Clippy changes won't either. A lot of them are stylistic as well. Some of them will help you, but other ones are, yeah, so it could make it better, change the behavior or not, or just make it easier to read. But yeah, going back into this, you want to look in the component section of the Rust Up book to see what components are a part of it. And Cargo is a component, and Rust FMT is a separate component.
I see.
So if you want to look into here, you have Rust docs as well, just the Rust documentation, Rust Analyzer, the language server, which I don't believe, yeah, if we go into here, the complete profile has every component ever included. So it'll have more than just Rust Standard, Rust-C, Cargo, Rust docs, Rust FMT, Clippy, and Rust Up.
Oh, okay. So these are Cargo is actually it's a component of Rust Up.
Yes.
Okay. See, I was thinking that Rust Up was literally just like downloading the version of Rust that you would use, and then like Cargo was handling everything else. But they're all actually like submodules of Rust Up.
Yeah, Rust Up manages your toolchain, but your toolchain has these components. So like it manages the version, but the version contains all of these things if we're unstable.
Right. The tool chain is like all those components, not just like the version of Rust.
Yeah, let me change that to most of these things. Like you'll have a lot of the important ones like Rust C, Cargo, Rust format, but some other ones aren't necessarily included, but you won't really need them. Like some of these other
But
ones,
they're all
like
tools you would
yeah.
like, even if they're like optional, you would install them via RustUp. Like RustUp would be your entry point to get those tools, right?
Yeah, they're installed. So like if I install a Rust version, then it will install all of those tools for me. And if you watch the output, it does. So for example, if I say RustUp, so RustUp toolchain install, and then I want a specific version. So I want like something I don't have, like 1.65, let's say. And I install that, it's going to install all these components. So you see Cargo, Clippy, Rust docs, Rust standard, Rust C, Rust format, Cargo, Clippy, Rust docs. All of that is a part of this Rust version. That makes sense?
Yeah. And then Cargo is what actually handles like the Rust packages as well as like running the code and everything. And everything else is like formatting stuff, Clippy for like linting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, looking at the documentation on a local version, which I typically don't do because I have the ability to see it in my editor, which I will get into. Remind me if I don't. You obviously need the compiler. You need the standard library if you're going to you want to use a lot of features. A lot of Rust code relies on syscalls like println. You can't use a println macro if you can't print to the console. So if you're in a lower level environment than even like you're making your own operating system, for example, then you need to implement some of that stuff yourself. You couldn't run Rust standard. But yeah, you can also install other components. So I can probably run RustUp component list. That's a lot of stuff. A lot of Rust standards. Okay, well that's not what I thought it was. Oh, I was thinking of Cargo. I was thinking of Cargo binaries that I had sold. But yeah, you can look into the Cargo book as well and see what it's all about. And I will send that over. Did you have any more questions?
No, I think that's it.
Cool. So an example, since I have documentation, so like here is some documentation that I can just pull up right in my editor. It's just all right here, tells me exactly everything here. So println is going to print to standard out with a new line added. And then it tells me this is exactly how I can use it. And it could panic, which is the same as throwing an error in other languages if it can't write to standard out. Oh yeah, the other thing that I was going to do So if we go to settings JSON, you can set your Rust Analyzer check command to Clippy, and it will run Clippy instead of rustc. I believe it's rustc that it's linting with. So I set my check to run Clippy, and it'll give me better lints. And I will throw that setting in the chat for anyone who wants to do that. Okay, so getting a little bit deeper into cargo, we have our cargo lock and cargo toml. Cargo toml is our human readable version. We'll have all of our packages in here. So I can add some more keys. I can set authors of the package. There's lots of other things. I can also install dependencies. I could add a dependency that I want. So I could say cargo add to install a dependency. So cargo add RNG, let's say. And my version's outdated. I forget how to do. Okay, there we go. Perfect. So yeah, now we have RNG, and that extension is doing something now. Okay. So here's my dependencies, and you can specify for some packages what features does something have. So you only want a specific piece of that package instead of all of it, you can do that. So here's our human readable portion, but we also have a cargo lock, which is going to tell us, is this the, it's going to store hashes for package revisions. So instead of writing inside of our cargo toml, this is the hash for the last thing. We're going to say, okay, here is the checksum for this package that's it's dependent on. And we can be sure that we're not downloading an incorrect version, or the package owner decided to push some more commits without actually updating their version. Some more things that Cargo is going to help us out with is installing dependencies. So I have not actually run this code, but we may as well use that package. So let's use RNG. I'm just going to throw this somewhere. I don't know. Oh, that's a trait. Okay. Is it just on the RNG object? It may be. Who knows? I have not used RNG in a while. But we have RNG. And if I run my code, it's going to now add this to our crate and compile it. But if we were using RustUp, you'd have to install and build those dependencies. But Cargo's very nice. It builds those dependencies for you. And here is a rule here from Clippy that says, hey, can you please delete this? You're not actually using it. So what I can do is open up my quick fix menu, and I can say remove all unused imports, and then it's happy. But something else, if I want to use or maybe create a file in here or read from a file, let's just create a directory or something. So if I do this, I type fs, it gives me a few different things that I can use. I can just click enter, it's going to autocomplete it. And then I can do any of these things, and I have beautiful documentation for all of it. So let's do something like create dir, and we'll call it anything. So let's say hello. And then from here, we can run this, and we have this here. And if I wasn't sure how to use this, I could look right here, see all of this stuff. When can it cause an error? I don't have permissions. The path already exists. So if I do that, it does error because we already have hello. And we'll get into error handling eventually, but just to show off some more documentation. Anyone have any questions, thoughts? Okay. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, so it's time for... Oh, I see someone typing. But once we get through questions, I'm gonna quiz everyone. Oh, what is the double colon?
I didn't know there would be a test.
There is a test. You're gonna have to learn. You can't just sit here and hear me talk.
Jasper, your voice is so soothing. It helps me out on a long day.
Thank you. So this double colon, if I go into file system, which is a lot to look at. What was I looking at? I was looking at create dir. So if I am in fs.rs, and here is create dir within this module. So our crate is called fs, and then this is the specific item within here called create dir. Does that make sense? So long story short, in this case, it's a path separator. It can mean other things, but here, oh yeah, here's another one. So our crate, I misspoke before. Our crate is standard. So this is a crate called standard. It's the Rust standard library. And then in here, we have a module called fs. And then within module, we have create dir, which is a function.
Yeah, so just like C++, you have to import the libraries for each method. Well, not method, function specifically.
Not everything. there's certain things
Not
that
everything.
are in the prelude
Oh,
of the standard library. So for example, printline, that's just right here.
yeah, you're right. That's true.
So some of them, the prelude specifically for the standard library doesn't need imported, but there's a lot of things in here that are just totally fine and are just here. So if I make another function, like function keyword, I don't have to import. Use keyword, I don't need to import. And then just like a return type of all of these types here don't need imported. So like I could do, oh, these ones are not, I believe. Oh no, these should be. So let's click this. So this imports it, but I don't need to import it because it's already a part of the prelude. It's just erroring because I'm not returning the correct thing. Oh, why did I type I32? But yeah, here this works. And then we're getting something else from Clippy. Or actually, that's Rusty. But it's saying we're not using this code. So there's nothing really here. It wants me to generate documentation for it. But yeah, just some more things here. It'll warn you. Any other questions, thoughts before we get into questions?
What's that leading 0 on the I-28?
Oh, that's just the number 0, but as an I-28.
Oh, I see. You're applying it like a... Okay.
Yeah, this is the number 0. You could also, you'll see it with the numeric
Okay, yeah,
separator.
I hadn't seen it like right up next to the
A funny thing is you
to the
can
digit before.
you can add as many separators as you want, but Clippy's gonna say, "Hey, can you not do that?" And I agree. But yeah, it's exactly like that. You're just specifying the number. I wonder if I just put an integer. Yeah, it's
Do
okay if I
you-
just put the integer. I didn't have to.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna ask, do you even have to if it's just a literal?
I did not have to. I've never used an I-128, so I don't know what I was
100,
thinking.
How many is 1, 2
How big
to
is
the
that?
128? How big? That's a big number.
Big number.
3.4 times 10 to the 38.
Large.
Very large.
Well, we're getting into a little bit of a thing here. So
Oh,
here's
yeah, that's a big end.
this Rust has integer types or number types.
Is a big int
And a lot-
128 bits? Sorry.
I think a big N in Java would be more than that. I don't remember.
What would it be? 256? There's no way.
Yeah,
you meant
JavaScript,
big. I thought you
it's
meant like
anything.
the literal like big int type. It might be. I don't know.
Yeah, no. Wait, give me one sec. I'll look it up.
Well, luckily for us, we have. Do we have? Is num a thing? I think it is. Oh no, it's not. That's a different.
Does it say?
It's a crate, probably. But yeah, we're getting a little off topic. We can get into it
That's-
later, but yeah. Let's get into some questions so we don't take it too long. And then feel free. So, first one, gonna we'll open the git ignore. Okay. And close the terminal so no one can cheat. So, what is the entry point for a Rust binary?
FN main.
Yeah, let's go. Yes, it is main. And by the way, I stole a lot of these from the Brown Rust book for their very nice questions.
The what Rust book?
The Brown University Rust book.
Oh, Brown University. Okay.
Yeah, I have to specify, but yeah, they did all the research for me, so I don't have to. Good questions. I'll take them. Which
Totally not looking up the Brown University book for the answers.
Hey, don't do it. I changed some of them slightly. You can't look up all of them.
F, Control F.
Dread.
So what is the CLI tool that we use to manage Rust installations?
Rust up.
Yeah. Exactly, Rust up. I see someone in chat said Cargo. So Cargo is something installed with Rust up. It's a part of the toolchain installed. But Rust up installs the versions. So if you want version 1.73 of Rust, then it will give you all of those components, including Cargo. Cargo is the package manager. Good thing that definitely isn't a question that I'm not going to skip over. Just kidding, that isn't actually a question. I have a deeper question for Cargo. So what does rustc do?
It compiles Rust code.
Yes. It's the compiler. And then the final question. So what are some of the benefits of using Cargo over just rustc?
Cargo manages all your packages or your libraries, so you don't have to.
Yeah, that's one of them.
It manages dependencies, and also it's basically a build system. So there are several options to build, like development build and the production build, I guess.
Yeah. It abstracts a lot of that away too, so you can build for production versus debug mode a lot easier.
Yeah, and also performance. They tune it. Cargo tunes when you build the production.
It also has components for linting and formatting.
Does it?
No.
Oh, well, no, not Cargo. We're talking about Cargo, not Rust.
Yeah, why use Cargo over Rust up?
But you invoke them with Cargo.
You can.
Oh, so Cargo just has like a interface for it, but it's not like a component of Cargo. Okay. See, that's why I was so confused, because all those components, like I knew I'd used before as part of Cargo, but they're actually part of Rust up.
Yeah. So you could run I believe, might get these commands wrong, but rust fmt, we could run rust fmt main.rs. Main rs does not exist because it's in source, of course. So we formatted our code. Let's do some weird formatting stuff. Oh no, okay, now let's run it. So there we go. I can run rust fmt right there, but I could also do something different. I could run cargo fmt, and that way it does the same thing, except for one key difference.
Dun dun dun. I don't know.
Look at those two
What's the
commands. What's the
difference?
difference?
One's shorter.
Why
and
is
you
it
don't
shorter
have
though?
to specify the file path.
Exactly.
Yay.
So yeah, one of the things I should have gone in a little bit deeper with. So once you know how to run one cargo project, you can run all of them pretty much. You just need to do cargo run unless there's any kind of binaries you need to install. But typically, if I handed you this repo, you could run cargo run. It would work perfectly fine. You wouldn't even need to look at any of the file names. And if you want to format cargo FMT, just formats everything perfect. Removes the using Rust-C directly, finding that file, then going into your target directory, running whichever specific version of that file you want to run. Maybe you don't want to run the debug version. Any other benefits over Rust up using cargo?
Wait, what? Benefits over rust up using cargo? I don't
Oh,
understand.
are there any other benefits of using cargo over Rust FMT? Or sorry, not Rust FMT, Rust up. Why should we use it? Oh, sorry. Why should
I'm
we use...
confused.
Okay, sorry. I'm going to take a second to think about my sentence. Same thing as before. So why use cargo over just Rust-C and the associated tools like ReftFMT directly?
You can also add a lot of configuration files. There was what was it, like a format toml, so you can add configurations. I guess, is that part of probably Rust format anyway? But
Yeah, that's not
I'm sure.
it doesn't add anything to that. It does have its own configuration files though.
Yeah,
like
for
our
like
cargo toml.
packages. Yeah, for dependencies rather, but we already mentioned that.
Also more settings within our actual code here. So like if I'm like, what if I want to specify Rust version? I could say we need 1.65 to run this. And if I try to run it with a different version, lower version, then it will error out. With the one caveat that if you're using a version of Rust that can read that, it's funny that the earlier versions don't actually read that key, so it kind of works sometimes. But yeah.
What, the package? Or just Rust version?
Oh, the Rust version key.
Does it just default to something? Like,
It just warns that it doesn't know what this key is called or what
Huh.
this key is, and it doesn't abide by it. Because how could it?
you said this is just older Rust versions or older cargo versions?
Older, I mean, yeah, both. But cargo is associated with the Rust version.
Oh, so cargo, what was it like? Shipped with like a particular Rust version, so you couldn't specify.
Yeah, so that wasn't a feature of the language at that time, or a
Right.
feature specifically of cargo. So there's no
So
way for it
if
to
you wanted
apply.
a new Rust version, you would install a new version of cargo. Like they were linked, basically.
Yeah, if you install a new version of Rust, it uses a different version of cargo. Any other general questions? Or questions about anything we went over?
That's the wrong link.
Oh, I see. How old is Rust? So
Yeah, 2015 apparently. Was when it first
2015's
appeared.
the first release, not the first.
Oh.
It's difficult to pin it down. Depends what you're talking about. So if you're talking about when did it start getting worked on, that was 17 years ago. When did it start? When did it become a Mozilla project? That's a different time. So it's pretty old conceptually, let's say. So at least 17 years old.
– 2006.
Yeah.
It was by a project by Mozilla Research, or by an employee of Mozilla Research. But it wasn't, I guess.
Okay, I looked up the history. So it was first worked on the Rust programming language. That is an awkward sentence for me to say. In 2006, and then after working on it for several years, it became a Mozilla project in 2010. And then in 2015, Rust 1.0 was released as an independent project, and the main legal and financial sponsor is still Mozilla. And then in 2021, the Rust management moved to the Rust Foundation. And Rust is named after the Rust fungus because it is robust, distributed in parallel, which I did not know.
The fungus.
Oh yeah, one of the other things I don't think got mentioned for cargo is you can implicitly pass compiler flags. Like if you always want verbose output, you can set that, and you can also set your own custom commands if you'd like. So you could install something, let's say you install ripgrep. You can install that through cargo and run it in the command line. Okay, before I forget, let's get into next week's homework. So for next week, we have some more hands-on. So we'll probably have a bit more to talk about then. So programming a guessing game. So figuring out a few of Rust's nicer features. So reading from a file, reading from standard in, and then so receiving user input, there's also the brand crate, which I mixed up with RNG, which is why I didn't know how to use it. I installed the wrong crate. Using cargo to build your output. Updating crates. Enums match statements. So a lot of good stuff in here. I didn't think of that either. Potentially functions. But yeah, some good hands-on. Get a good feel for the language. And this is just all one big section. Anyone have any final thoughts?
No, I'm really excited though. For this book club session. I think it's going to be exciting.
Yeah. It's super cool. You'll get to see how nice it is. So definitely before this one, make sure you install Rust Analyzer at least beforehand, so you can get the language server working. So I will drop that in chat. So definitely have this installed if you're using VS Code. Otherwise, find however you install the language server for your IDE of choice. Cool.